Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Tammy Yi, who serves amongst a host of different roles that she plays as music education professor at Chapman University's College of the Performing Arts. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh yes, no, absolutely, and right, and you have roles as a conductor, and obviously you're an educator and focus on young people, but also I would say a social entrepreneur and an arts entrepreneur, and obviously an arts leader. So it's so exciting to have you on the show, and I thought it would be great, and especially Chapman, which is one of our great creative partners for Arts Engines, who helped us to co-curate this show thinking about, right, and lots of people are talking about DE&I, and specifically in the arts. And while I think that there's a lot of people who feel like, oh, there was this kind of focus and kind of a rise in impact over, the past maybe 3, 4, 5 years, that some people are concerned. And some people even ask questions. Some people don't even know what it means when we say DE&I in the arts. So thought we'd just kind of start there and thought if you could share kind of how do you view that and how does it touch or surround the work that you're doing, both at Chapman and a host of things that you've done even before that.
Yeah, so at Chapman University, as you mentioned, I'm a music education professor where I train and teach students who want to be future music teachers in K through 12 school settings. In addition, I also founded the first collegiate mariachi ensemble in Orange County at Chapman, also known as Mariachi Banderas, with my Mexican American students who are music education majors. As a music education professor, I am in sort of a hybrid role, contributing to music education society. Either it is through performing, writing and research, and teaching. So I also serve as the conductor for the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, and I work with brilliant leaders in El Sistema Orchestra programs, such as Camille Delaney McNeil, as well as Gaudi Sanchez. And in my identity and in my role, I get invited to speak at conferences, conduct honor groups across the world, and I meet with teachers, especially teachers of color, to serve their community, build community, and support their mission and goals towards actionable social change. And I also teach at the Coburn Conservatory of Music, where I teach pedagogy classes for graduate students. So in that capacity, I'm able to really educate teachers, the future generation of artists and musicians and performers on DEI efforts, and to teach students and my college students about culturally responsive pedagogy, community responsiveness at the same time, pursuing this artistic excellence. So that's been really great, especially with the mariachi ensemble with Chapman University, where I'm educating my community about the first gen experience. And in these spaces, they get to see what diversity looks like. Of course, they can see this is diversity to them, right? But in reality, they're seeing how we engage with music, how we interact with music, which really translates to the first gen experience on how we support each other as a family and build community and spaces of belonging on our campus.
Absolutely incredibly important work. And thank you also for sharing just the breadth of the way in which you're doing it. And so I'm wondering, and for those in our audience, some of the work that they're either currently doing or that they want to do, they sometimes either might experience pushback or the environment they're in isn't necessarily supportive, or they get questions along the lines of, why, right? Why is this work important, and or how does this impact what we do at X university or at X orchestra? As you think about that, what would you suggest to them as the answer to the why question they may get, the value question as it relates to this important work?
Yeah, I think in the performing arts world, as well as in music education, we are doing such a disservice to the arts by gatekeeping and by reproducing whiteness and reproducing these Eurocentric ideologies. And it's not just the music that we perform; it's the way we interact and create and perform and produce all the different ways that um, you know people of color, for example, have felt safe and cared for within our space. So when folks that I mean, throughout all my life, I think people have pushed back a lot. They were resistant because they were very uncomfortable with any sort of change. And however, I often think about the teachers too, who actually are part of the process of either change or resistance. And when you have such a cultural identity that you don't even know your identity, even as a performing artist or as a musician or as a teacher or as a person contributing to society, how can you create change or see anything differently? You've been brainwashed to think as well as taught to assimilate this entire time on what is the right way to do things or the right music we should be performing. So there has been resistance in my field for sure. And what I've done in my advocacy work is to really educate people about their cultural identity, that culture is not about just race or ethnicity. It's about, culture manifests in multiple ways, and that we choose to be part of certain cultures, and sometimes we don't choose to be part of certain cultures. And all of those cultures informed our thinking and our values. So what I do is unpack that with teachers to make them think about where do they come from and how culture influences their thinking and their efforts moving forward. So that's been a whole educational process for sure for everybody, because we as Americans, we don't have an identity. And especially being people of color, the stories are not often shared and told in schools. So we don't know what our contributions are in society. So what do we further then? We further whiteness then, which is something that is an ideology, which is we could then choose to be like, hey, we're just going to continue this Eurocentric ideology because this is all we know.
Right, absolutely. And my sense is that in the arts, right, it's such an amazing way to connect someone to a culture they may not be familiar with or don't know, and somehow can be able to experience a deeper understanding and connectedness with any culture that might be different than theirs, etc.
Absolutely.
And do you find as you go about this work that are there any kind of mechanisms or approaches? So again, I'm thinking of people in our audience who are doing this work, so many of them, right, and working to try and create impact. Are there any mechanisms or best practices that you have found in the breadth of the way in which you've approached this that you're like, you know what, these things have really worked for me when I'm engaging in a new initiative or when I'm tackling a new group of students or even working with another institution? Here are things, some core things that I do that I find are very helpful or really end up having a big impact.
Yeah, I think what's really important is for us to find ourselves and know ourselves and where do we come from, starting from the root, right, from the very beginning. And in that process, we begin to reflect about, okay, well, I didn't know this part of my identity. For example, I just came back from South Korea and I did a research project on my identity because I really wanted to know my historical roots. I wanted to know about my family. And that really strengthens my understanding of where do I come from and who am I and how am I contributing to this world. And just doing that work and really unpacking that work within ourselves really helps us navigate spaces of advocacy better because now we know what that process looks like. So we can easily just say, "Hey, I want to be part of this organization and create actionable social change." That's great. I love that you have the compassion and the energy and the excitement for it. But what ends up happening when you don't do the work within yourself, you end up harming a lot of people in that process. So, because you might miss so many things that do matter on how we build relationships with communities, so what I always advise my students, as well as many teachers of color with the support network, we form together. I always remind everyone, stay focused on the people you are serving, um, because we can easily get distracted and feel dehumanized within any type of organization, because the work we do is such an important work, but it will feel alone for sure. And also to be open to listening. And we are such intelligent human beings who know a lot about music. We dissect music, we think intellectually about music, we can explain music and talk about music, but apply those same exact strategies in the human experience when we are interacting with human beings. And lastly, always develop your racial consciousness. If you're in America, be mindful of your racial trauma and how that impacts your interactions with others, how you work and collaborate with others, and how you care for others. And be ready to learn how your cultures can contribute to white supremacy.
This work that you're doing is so impactful. It's clearly seen why you're having such an impact over an extended period of time. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time, but I always like to ask of all of my guests, right, this work, which obviously is so rewarding and you're creating such an impact, there has to be some tough days where it feels like a potential obstacle you can't overcome. And just wondering, as an arts leader, is there something that you do that helps you through and or past those more challenging circumstances or situations?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, as I said, that we are kind of in this weird identity crisis. Use the arts to share our story, share our narratives. Just like you, Erin, you are sharing a platform for people to share their stories because often they've been erased. Um, so it's really important that we understand how we contribute to the performing arts and into arts education in all spaces, how we co-create, and how artistry teaches everyone how to listen to each other. So continue with that inspiration, because I think when I think about people, that really drives me and moves me uh, to, and also validates me that the work that I'm doing really does matter.
Tammy Yi, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything that you do, the impact that you're having, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out.